To change your transmission fluid and filter, you will need to begin by safely raising and supporting your vehicle. If you need additional assistance with that task, please follow the link provided at the end of this video for further assistance. In order to gain access to the bottom transmission sump, you will need to remove the rear plastic underbody trays and aluminum crossbar. The underbody trays are held in place by 3 Phillips head screws and a series of 10mm nuts. The crossbar is held in place by 2 15mm bolts as indicated by the green arrow. I recommend that you start the draining process only when the engine is cold. When the car is warm, a lot of the transmission fluid will be trapped within the transmission itself. When the car is cold, almost all the transmission fluid has seeped out and is trapped in the lower sump. Note that this is opposite from the procedure when changing oil, where you should empty it when the engine is hot. That is because the oil is thinnest and flows best when it's hot. The transmission fluid has a totally different viscosity. Working on the car when it is cold also assures that you will not get burned by the hot exhaust, transmission, or engine parts. The green arrow shows the transmission filler plug, and the insert photo shows the 17mm hex socket required to remove the transmission drain plug. After the fluid has drained, remove all of the fasteners and pull off the sump plate. Using a lint-free cloth, carefully wipe down the inside of the sump. You want to make sure you use lint-free cloth because tiny cloth fibers left in your transmission sump can clog the transmission and the filter. The sump needs to be clean, spotless, and look brand new as shown on the right. Make sure that you remove any remaining gasket material from the edge of the sump cover. A new transmission sump gasket has been lined up with the holes and the assembly is ready for installation back onto the transmission. In the upper left, the new transmission filter is displayed. You should always use a new O-ring on the transmission filler plug, as shown in the middle left photo. Pay close attention to the magnet in the bottom of the sump, shown on the lower left. You should be able to simply pluck this magnet from the bottom of the sump and clean it. The 2002 and later Carreras use a different style of oil pan, gasket, and retaining bolts, shown here on a C4. The pan is held on by 6 bolts and clamping sleeves, yellow arrows. Both the drain and fill plugs are now 6mm. The drain plug is located on the bottom of the pan, red arrow, while the fill plug is located further up and to one side of the pan, blue arrow. When reinstalling the pan, make sure you tighten the bolts in a crisscross pattern. The transmission fluid filter is a large canister that is attached to the bottom of the transmission and needs to be removed and replaced. Remove the bolts that attach it to the bottom of the transmission and carefully pull off the filter. Check the mounting surfaces where the sump attaches to the transmission and remove any excess gasket material that may have been left there. When you reinstall the filter onto the transmission, use the same bolts you just removed. These bolts should be torqued to a very light 6 Nm, which is 4.5 foot-pounds. The insert photo shows the new filter installed in place. Getting the hose into the sump area so that you can fill the transmission can be a bit tricky if you're not aware of where the hose is supposed to go. This photo shows the hose threaded up the bottom of the filler hole and sticking out into the transmission sump. When the sump is installed back onto the transmission, you will need to feed the hose up the filler hole and through the opening in this baffle attachment. With the sump installed, tighten the bolts according to the following pattern. These bolts require very little torque, only 11 Nm or 8 foot-pounds. Be sure to clean off any dirt or debris that may be on the screws prior to reinstalling them. You're going to need a fluid pump, which you can find at almost any local auto parts store, in order to fill the sump. The pump works just like a liquid soap pump in your bathroom. Transmission fluid should be pumped into the bottom of the sump through the transmission fill hole. Remove the plug. Place one end of the pump into the bottle of transmission fluid and start pumping. Pump fluid into the filler hole until the fluid begins to run out rapidly. Clean up the small spill, then replace the fill plug, only slightly tighter than hand tight. You will be removing it again shortly when you recheck the levels. You're going to be underneath the car checking for temperature while you bring the transmission up to the proper operating temperature. Make sure to take care and stay away from breathing any sort of exhaust fumes. Make sure you're working in a well-ventilated area, or better yet, vent the car to the outside. Start the car, and with your foot fully on the brake, make sure you run the transmission through all the gears. Then, putting it in park, leave it running. Check the temperature of the oil pan on the transmission. Once it's up to operating temperature, you want to top up the fluid through the fill plug until it's slowly leaking out again. Once this happens, the transmission is full and at the correct level. You want to reinstall the fill plug with a new O-ring. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and check out another video in this series.